Now, I'm not one to usually browse spicy sites, but one cold February night a few weeks ago, I not only looked at the content but signed up for their premium membership. I figured it was 150 well spent. I was watching a live feed of a stunning woman being pleasured by a very handsome, well-built guy. I've seen better, but something about this scene really got to me. It was the woman hot wife Rachel they called her, but I knew her real name was Sarah. Sarah was my wife. Sarah was moaning rather loudly as the unknown guy was pleasuring her. I could see from the expression of lust on her face that she was enjoying it immensely. I had witnessed that look of desire firsthand many times. As I continued to watch, my prediction came true, and she let it go, shaking as she cried out from the intense pleasure she was receiving. Blissful Haven was certainly a fitting name for the website because she was doing what came naturally, enjoying herself to the fullest. When Sarah rolled over on the bed, laying there looking completely satisfied, he grinned and said, "Well, darling, that was pretty damn good. I bet your old man never makes you climax that good. Does he, hot wife Rachel?" Sarah grinned back at him and said without hesitation, "Well, Kevin, that was pretty damn good for sure, as you say. But just so you know, no one lights me up like my husband. I've been with a few men, but no one ever makes me happy like he does. You're good, but he's fantastic, so don't stop trying, try harder." And she grinned at him again. Kevin looked at her quizzically and asked, "Well, if he's so fantastic, why are you cheating on him by coming here and letting me do you?" She replied without losing her grin, "I didn't plan for it to happen, but I like to have fun and am glad you're here for me. I also do it because I can get away with it, and he'll never know. I actually love my husband with all my heart, and after 3 nights here, I realize how much better he is than what I get here, and it makes me love him and appreciate him all the more." She laughed and added, "Actually, I probably am doing him a favor by coming here and doing this, so get over here and give me some more." Like I said earlier, the 150 was money well spent because I was able to see what was going on with my loving wife for a lot less than surveillance equipment or private investigators would have cost me. You're probably asking yourselves how I got here, what transpired before that night to make me go to this site. It's a good question, and I guess the most honest answer would be a fluke, a rare piece of good fortune that turned my way. Not good fortune that my wife was with Kevin, but good fortune in that I now knew she was betraying me. Sarah and I have been married for just over 12 years. We first met when we were in high school together. We grew up in a small town in eastern Ohio. She lived in town, and I lived out in the suburbs. Her father owned the largest construction company in the area, and my father owned a chain of hardware stores. Because our parents did business together, it was natural that we would meet, go to school together, and become friends. I won't bore you with the high school crushes, the college romance, or even the early years of our marriage. We both dated, and yes, were intimate with other people. We hadn't been exclusive with one another, but deep down, I guess we always knew that we should be a couple. Oh yes, I was indeed the one who took her virginity, but along the way, there were others for her and for me. It was in our junior year at Ohio State University that we decided to become exclusive, and sometime later, I asked her to marry me. About a year and a half later, 1 week after we graduated, we were married. We both received degrees in business management. Life was good, at least I thought it was, until that night in February. Anyway, let me continue. 3 years ago, Sarah's parents retired and moved to Denver, Colorado. Sarah, her sister Lisa, and her 2 brothers, Aaron and Ethan, bought 51 interest in the construction business from Steve Sr. He wanted to retain controlling interest for a few years to add his financial backing to their growth. Eventually, he would begin to decrease his interest until they owned it 100. Lisa is married to a friend of mine, James Anderson, who also happens to be in the construction business. He operates a company that is just a few projects smaller than mine. We live quite close to each other and spend some good times with them. Aaron and Ethan co-manage the construction business, and Sarah is their controller bookkeeper. Lisa also works at the company, dealing with customers and processing sales transactions, etc. It is a true family-run business with a few additional employees, mostly project managers and laborers. During the peak building season, they employ a few part-time workers also. I guess that's enough background. So I should continue with the sordid tale of how I discovered my wife betraying me with another man online and what happened after that discovery. All four of the Anderson children had spent a huge amount of extra time putting together the deal for the purchase of the interest in the construction business from their father. I wasn't involved much in it, but I knew that they had to bust their humps to get the deal done. There were bank meetings, meetings with the Ohio Department of Commerce, meetings with insurers. All of them were burned out after the deal was done. Fortunately, this all took place during the winter, which was their slowest time of the year. For me, it was after a major expansion project, so I didn't need Sarah at the office as much as I would have during my two busy times of the year. She didn't actually do any of the construction work herself, but with several large projects in the pipeline, those times are extremely busy for me, and I needed Sarah to run errands for me, etc. You get the picture. So, since we weren't busy, the girls Sarah and Lisa decided they wanted to take a few days and go to a spa to relax and unwind. They booked a 3-night getaway at an appropriately named spa called Tranquil Waters. I know I spoke of Blissful Haven, but that was the name on the website. The real name of the spa was Tranquil Waters. The girls came back so relaxed and rejuvenated that they decided to do it again that February after the planning season was well over the next year. They booked another weekend. It was during that weekend spa visit that I was viewing the video online. But how did I ever find it? Thomas Green, the field agent for the Ohio Department of Commerce in our county, happened to stop by during a routine tour of his area of responsibility. Sarah and I had known Michael in college, and he asked about her. I mentioned that she was on a getaway at Tranquil Waters. Michael gave me a funny look and said that there was something odd happening there that maybe I would be interested in checking out. He said a cousin of his used to work at that spa as a masseuse and had told him some pretty wild tales about what happened there. He said they even had a website with a different name. He didn't recall the exact name, but thought it had something to do with pleasure. I asked him what he was talking about, and he cautiously said he didn't really want to go into it, but that I should check it out. Well, you don't know me, but I'm an internet explorer. I go online and poke around looking for interesting stuff, and occasionally do hit spicy sites, but usually just other interesting stuff. So, that evening in question, I did some poking around and found Blissful Haven. It didn't take long to find the live feed, and the game was on. Now I can tell you all about what happened that night. But why? You know what happened. I was hurt. I cried. I yelled. I got angry. I got depressed. And I got everything else a man would get when he found out his wife betrayed him. I soon found out that it wasn't the first time she had cheated either because Blissful Haven had an archive folder, and I was able to find videos from the previous 2 visits as well as videos of the 2 previous nights Sarah and Lisa had been there. With the premium membership, I was able to download each of the videos for an additional $40 each. I downloaded the 2 videos from their first visit, 3 from their second visit, and 3 from the current trip. I downloaded 8 videos and all at a cost of $300. So, for a grand total of $400, I had all the evidence I would ever need to divorce my wife. I just didn't have a plan yet on how I was going to do it, but I knew it had to start right away. I wouldn't wait a month or 2 weeks or even 1 week to bring it about. As far as I was concerned, the quicker we parted company, the better. She had been with another man a minimum of 8 times, and I had video proof. Actually, she had been with at least 2 different men, Kevin and Kevin, on the videos I had downloaded. I didn't know, and I didn't even care if there had been more. 2 men and 8 times were more than enough. I made a few copies of the videos on DVDs and put them in a very safe place. When my father built the house, he had a wall safe installed with access through a hidden panel in the built-in bookcase in the office. Once the copies were safely hidden away, I deleted all references to Blissful Haven on my computer and deleted all of the original files. Other than the DVD copies, there was no longer a trail to what I had as evidence. When all of that had been done, I got my cell phone and sent a text message to Sarah on her cell phone. Sarah, this is Michael. I happen to know exactly what you were doing at Tranquil Waters, and I have evidence to back it up. Don't bother to come back to the house. If you decide to come back here at all, this house is no longer your home, and soon I will no longer be your husband. We are finished. My lawyer will be in touch with you in the next few days. Arrangements can be made at that time for you to come and pick up your personal possessions. Apparently, Sarah had turned her cell phone off and never got my text message until the next morning because I never heard a thing from her that night. But early the next day, my phone started ringing. I could see by caller ID that it was Sarah, so I didn't pick up. Soon, I heard her leaving me a voicemail. Michael, what in the world are you talking about? Honey, I have no idea what is going on there, but why on earth would you text me such awful stuff? Lisa and I are packing up now, and I will be home in a couple of hours. I don't know what you were thinking I did, but you were wrong. I will see you when I get there, and then we can talk. I love you, Michael. A very short time later, my cell phone rang again, and again I didn't answer it, but let it go to voicemail. Again, it was the same message almost word for word. I wondered if she had written down what she was going to say. When I didn't answer that call, it didn't take long for the text message to come through. She was like a broken record because she repeated almost verbatim what she had said in the 2 telephone messages. Since I didn't have to actually talk to her, I decided to send a short reply back to her by text so she knew I got her messages but chose not to talk to her. I simply texted her, "I wonder if Kevin would have any idea about what in the world you were talking about, honey, if I asked him. Why don't you have him call me and I will ask him? What I said about not coming back to the house, I mean it. Do not think you can come home. You cannot. It is over, Sarah." I didn't get any more texts, but I did get another phone call from Sarah later that afternoon. She left a message, "Michael, we need to talk. I am staying with Lisa until you and I talk and put this awful misunderstanding behind us. Please call my cell phone and talk to me." That was Wednesday afternoon, and I did not return the call. The next morning, I went to my bank and arranged for a second safe deposit box in my name only. I put 1 copy of the DVDs in the box, along with the original of my prenuptial agreement. I had made arrangements for a meeting with my lawyer at 11 a.m., so I had made an additional copy of the prenuptial agreement. He had one, I was sure, but I didn't want to take a chance that there would be any problem. At the appointed time, I walked into my lawyer's office, and there sat Sarah. She looked up at me when I walked in, and I could see that she looked like hell. It was obvious that she had been crying. Her hair was unkempt, and I could see that she had not had much sleep because there were dark circles under her eyes. She always got that way when she was overtired. Sarah said to me, "Michael, we have to talk about this." I asked, "How did you know I was going to be coming here?" She said, "Charlie called me when you made the appointment." At that time, Robert Moore, my attorney, came out into the reception area and asked us both to come into his office. My anger was seething beneath the surface, so I said, "No, Charlie, we will not be going into your office together. You have broken my trust by calling Sarah, and I need a straight answer from you right this moment. Are you going to represent me and leave me? You know, lawyers are supposed to be so damn smart, but this guy must have gotten shortchanged in the distribution of brains because he said, 'No, Michael, if this continues, I will be representing Sarah.' It turns out he thought that the construction business was a better client for him than my hardware store chain was. It actually may have been because besides the construction business, he had all of the Anderson family members too. I had my opinion on that issue and felt that he would eventually realize the error of his thinking. Fine, Charlie, please have all of my original documents in your possession and all copies of contracts and other paperwork of mine that you have available to me at 4 p.m. today. I will either stop by to pick them up or have a courier drop by to pick them up. I just want you to know that I have appreciated the work you have done for me in the past, but you are making a big mistake here, Charlie. I will be seeking legal services elsewhere, and my new attorney will be contacting you as soon as possible." Sarah had stood quietly during this entire exchange, but now pleadingly asked, "Michael, why won't you talk to me now to clear this up?" "Because, Sarah, it is obvious that Charlie values you greater as a client than he values me, and I will not be having this conversation with you without legal representation, and I wouldn't trust him." Charlie piped up, "Michael, you know I have always been straight with you, so you have nothing at all to fear." "Oh, Charlie, I have lots to fear. You cannot serve 2 masters, so they say, and it is clear whom you have chosen to be the master in this. Besides, you have already proven you can't be trusted when you called Sarah in here. Goodbye. My attorney will be in touch." I could hear Sarah begin to cry again when I walked out the door. Now I had to find a new attorney. Well, I knew that Alan Baker was a very capable attorney and highly competitive with Robert Moore. I figured that might be a good choice, but I wouldn't dive in without doing some checking. Attorneys, accountants, bankers, and insurance agents are people you get into bed with, and you better really know what you have before you pull back the covers. I realized that attorney-client relationships are most crucial because they almost always have privileged information. I knew a few people who used Greg, so I called the law office and asked them if they had a list of references. The secretary said they did have a list and gladly agreed to email it to me. There were 4 friends of mine on the list, so I decided to stop in to see 3 of them and get their opinion about the work that Greg did. It really didn't take a whole lot of time because each of the 3 quickly gave me a glowing recommendation for Greg. There was no doubt in my mind that he would do a good job for me. I didn't go see the 4th friend because it was James, and I didn't want to get him involved since he is married to Lisa, Sarah's sister. I called Greg's office a second time. I gave my name and asked if I could make an appointment to see him after 4 p.m. The receptionist told me that he was busy until 4:30 p.m., but she would check with him and see if he could see me after that. I realized that there was a chance that he would not see me, but I had to try. When she came back on the line, she said that Mr. Foster would indeed see me at 4:30 p.m., but it would have to be a short meeting as he had other obligations in the evening. I agreed to that and told her I would be there shortly before 4:30 p.m. She said, "I look forward to seeing you at that time." Then, "Mr. Turner, by the way, my name is Amanda. I am Greg's wife." At 4 p.m., I stopped at Charlie's office to pick up my paperwork, and they didn't have it all copied yet. It was obvious that they had been stalling, hoping that I would change my mind. I have to tell you that I blew up big time and told them that I had better have every piece of my legal paperwork in the next 15 minutes, or my new attorney would be contacting them. They asked me who that might be, and I told them they would find out soon enough. Well, that office was bustling after that. I think they had 3 people making copies all at one time, and 20 minutes later, I had every sheet. I still had time to get to Greg's office by my appointment time, so I didn't raise any more stink about being late on my deadline. I had my meeting with Greg, and he agreed to become my personal and business attorney. I asked him if I could leave all of the paperwork I had obtained with him for safekeeping, and he agreed to put it in his vault until we had the time to go over all of it together. We set an appointment for the next day, Thursday, at 9 a.m. to go over all of the paperwork and set a plan for my divorce. When I walked out of the office at 5:30 p.m., I smiled at Amanda and asked, "Well, Amanda, am I in trouble, or are your evening plans still okay?" She grinned back at me and said, "You did just fine, Mr. Turner. Our evening will go just as planned. I wish all of our clients were as prompt as you have been, but please call me Laura from here on." "Thank you, Laura, and you please call me Michael." The next morning, we reviewed all of my business paperwork and contracts. I can't discuss it here, though, attorney-client privilege and all that. I can tell you, though, that Greg thought that everything seemed to be in order from the business perspective. We broke for lunch, and Greg and Laura invited me to join them at the local diner. I agreed and met them there since I wanted to stop at my bank before we resumed in the afternoon. They were a charming couple, and we had a very enjoyable lunch together. I found out that they were both a few years ahead of me in school. Greg had said that he actually was in the same grade as Aaron Anderson, but that they were not close. I guess they were both too competitive with each other. I found out that they had been married about 12 years and had 2 daughters, ages 8 and 5. They showed me pictures, and the 2 little ones were very pretty. They took after their mom too. I could see both had beautiful smiles just like Laura. I think that lunch did me a world of good. It made the relationship with my new attorney much easier to transition into. But the negative to the lunch was that I realized that my life partner wasn't there with me anymore. Greg and Laura were so awesome together and reminded me so much of how it had been with Sarah before I found out about her cheating. It just made me sad, and a couple of times, I know my eyes missed it up. Greg didn't notice a thing, but I could see that Laura had noticed and got a concerned look on her face. After lunch, I stopped at the bank and made a few changes to protect my assets. I also picked up a $8,000 check payable to Allen Baker Law Offices. It would be a retainer for the work they would do for me in the near future. Greg hadn't asked for anything yet, but I knew he would appreciate the effort. I arrived back at the office at 1:30 p.m. to resume our meeting. Laura told me that Greg was on the phone, and she took me to the small conference room we had been meeting in. She asked me if I wanted any coffee or anything else, and I told her no, that I was fine. She sat down beside me in one of the chairs and reached out her hand to me. "Greg didn't tell me what's going on, Michael, but I can guess what this afternoon is going to be about based on your reactions at lunch. I see you are wearing a wedding ring, so I am guessing it has to do with your wife. If you will allow me, I'm going to ask Greg to let me sit in here with you this afternoon while we deal with whatever you have to tell us." I was on the verge of breaking down again, so I just nodded my agreement. My anger had tamed for the time being, and I guess the emotions of the hurt were stronger now. It would be good to have a woman close by with the sensitivity they have. I realized I just might need the sympathetic presence of having Laura there in the afternoon meeting. I told the entire story about discovering Sarah's cheating. I know I broke down a couple of times, and Laura stepped in to sympathize and comfort me. Once I regained control of my emotions, I informed them of my intentions. Unless something comes out to change my mind, I plan to file for divorce and to enforce the terms of the prenuptial agreement. Greg and I reviewed the prenuptial agreement in detail. The terms are pretty much as follows. I keep 100 of all hardware store assets, real estate, and personal property. Sarah keeps 100 of construction business assets. Sarah gets 50 of our financial assets if there has been no infidelity. If there has been infidelity, Sarah only gets $40,000 for each year she has been unfaithful, not 50. Michael only gets $40,000 for each year if he has been unfaithful, not 50. Household personal property is a 5,050 split regardless of the circumstances. Michael, I need you to show me the proof of infidelity, Greg asks. No, Greg, I have the proof, but I will not show it to you now, or to anyone else for that matter, unless we are forced to go to court over this. Then I will show it to the judge. Greg insists, Michael, I need to see it to be sure we have a case of infidelity. I need to be sure. Greg, you need to trust me. I have the proof, but I loved Sarah, and I don't want anyone seeing what I have seen unless it is absolutely necessary. Laura touched Greg on the arm and nods her head. Yes, Greg reluctantly agreed. During the next couple of days, Sarah called me several times and left me messages. I never took her calls and deleted the messages without listening to them. Greg called me and said we have set a Friday meeting with you, Sarah, and Charlie at 10:30 a.m. Greg and I drove over to Charlie's office to meet with him and Sarah. When we arrived, I saw that Sarah's car was already in the parking lot, so we went on into the office. Charlie's receptionist ushered us back to a small conference room where we waited only a couple of minutes before Charlie and Sarah came in. Sarah looked a lot better than she had when I saw her at Charlie's office earlier in the week. Obviously, she had fixed herself up for the meeting because she was, in fact, beautiful. I did everything I could do to keep my feelings hidden because I didn't want her to see how my heart ached for her. She smiled at me and said, Michael, I hope we can finally talk and get this misunderstanding behind us. I miss you and want to come home. I didn't respond to her because I felt my voice would crack if I said anything at the moment. I needed to get my emotions under control. It wouldn't be easy, but I had to do it. Greg spoke up. We are here to discuss the divorce proceedings for the dissolution of Michael and Sarah's marriage. I believe we should open up the discussion, giving each party time to express their thoughts and opinions about how this couple goes forward in their lives. Charlie was nodding and interjected. My client feels this is a total misunderstanding and welcomes the opportunity to clear the air and talk to her husband. I have been having a hard time controlling my emotions, but Charlie did me a big favor. He ignited the anger in me again, and right now it was at the boiling point. I knew I could control the anger, and that made it simple to also control my emotions, my hurt, and disappointment in Sarah. I would be okay. I said, that is fine with me, Charlie. Your client can talk to her husband. I looked across the table at Sarah and said, Sarah, here are some facts. When we married, we signed a prenuptial agreement, and we modified it 4 years ago when you bought into your father's business. I have brought along copies of the modified agreement for all parties to have. Sarah looked on in a bit of shock. She quietly said, but Michael, I don't want a divorce. I want to be your wife. Why can't we just get past this misunderstanding and go home and be happy again? I pretty much glazed over that comment and continued. Our intention was to protect individual interests while still reaping the benefits of our marriage. Originally, the prenuptial agreement was to protect assets held in my family over several generations. Then, when you bought into your father's business, it was to also protect the same assets long held in your family. In the event of a divorce, our agreement clearly spells out that I will retain 100 of the assets from my family, and you will retain 100 of the assets from your family. All debt pertaining to those business assets will accrue to the business, and the other party will have no responsibility. Because we jointly work to provide our marital assets, our agreement calls for certain monetary and property splits depending on the circumstances of our divorce. As this document clearly shows, You are entitled to all of your personal items, including clothing, jewelry, your car, and other items that a man would have no interest in. Likewise, I have the same entitlement on my side. All other non-business personal property such as furniture, artwork, electronics, etc., is to be split 50-50. Business personal property such as equipment and machinery, etc., is to remain 100 mine as it is an integral part of the business operation. The monetary distribution to you in the event of a divorce is 50 of financial assets if there has been no infidelity. There are two exceptions to that distribution in the event of infidelity, as you can see in the document. In the event that you divorce me for infidelity, the distribution would be that I get only $40,000 per year or $300,000, not 50. In the event that I divorce you for infidelity, the distribution would be $40,000 per year or $300,000 total, not 50. I'm going to ask you some questions, Sarah. How you answer the questions will determine whether I pursue the divorce and on what grounds. Obviously, that will also then determine the outcome of any monetary distributions. If our marriage is going to have any chance to survive, Sarah, you must answer each question with perfect honesty. If you refuse to answer or I catch you in any lie, it is over. Is that understood? Are you willing to do that to have a chance to save our marriage? Sarah had been sitting there looking totally stunned by my recitation of our prenuptial agreement. She quickly snapped out of it and responded, "Yes, Michael, I will answer your questions, and I will answer them honestly. I love you, and I want our marriage to survive. I will do anything to get you to stop this and allow me to come back home. Sarah, I would like to record these questions. Is that acceptable to you?" This time she hesitated a bit and turned to Charlie, who had pretty much remained silent up until this point. Charlie, being a typical lawyer, said, "Sarah, I would advise against that, but you do what you feel is important to you." With that, my lawyer Greg piped up, "Well, Sarah, I agree with Charlie and would advise you or my client not to tape this, but it is Michael that has to be convinced here, not Charlie or me. So do what you feel is right." Sarah said, "I will do anything to get past this misunderstanding. So yes, go ahead and tape this. I am okay with recording any conversation between Michael and me." Greg and I had brought along a recorder, so we put it on the table where all voices would be picked up by the microphones. "Sarah," I asked, "what are your questions?" "Sarah, I want to ask you if you have been faithful to me, but I want to ask it in 3 different time periods. The first time period is from the day we pledged to be exclusive with one another up until the day we were engaged. Were you faithful to me during that time period?" Sarah smiled and said, "Yes, Michael, I was faithful to you during that time period." She thought she was winning points now, but her smile was quickly turned to shock when I said, "Well, that is lie number 1. You couldn't even answer the very first question honestly. I should get up and walk out right now, but I won't yet. Are you telling me you didn't have a fling with Mike Nelson 2 days after we pledged exclusivity? Is that what you were telling me? Mike was that kind of guy, Sarah. He had to brag, and he, in fact, bragged to me that you invited him over to your apartment on a Thursday night when your roommates were going to be gone and he spent the night with you. Oh, and Sarah, he told me he didn't use a condom either. He grinned at me and said, 'Bareback is a lot more fun when you are with someone like Sarah.' His parting shot at me before he walked away was, 'Michael, she really loved it, and I am certain that I will get lots of repeat performances in the future, probably even after you marry her.' Now, you probably could say he made it all up, but strange as it seems, Lisa was nearby and happened to overhear it all. She walked over to me after Mike left and said, 'Michael, Sarah loves you, and she wanted that again. She was just giving him a farewell fling. Please don't do anything stupid.' And by the way, he lied. He did use protection. I saw the wrappers in the trash the next morning. So you see, Sarah, you have already lied to me, but I can understand what you did even if I hated it. I am going to give you a pass on this lie, but there will be no more passes from here on. Tell me the truth or suffer the consequences." After that event, I didn't trust you, so I watched you like a hawk for the next 6 months. For that entire 6 months, you did nothing to arouse suspicions in me. So I asked you to marry me and gave you the ring you have on your finger for the time being. I knew you were probably hoping that would come quicker, but I wasn't ready to trust you yet, so you had to wait. Question number 2. During our engagement from that day, you got the ring until our wedding day. Did you cheat on me? Sarah never hesitated a second as she said, "No, absolutely not." I knew what that answer was going to be because I said, well, I know that is true because, you see, I still didn't trust you totally, so I continued to observe you for that entire year until I felt I could trust you. I was almost certain you were faithful to me during that time. Charlie, to his credit, asked if we could take a break. He wanted to confer with his client and give her time to regroup. He had noticed, like me, that during my tirade about Mike Nelson, Sarah had gotten very emotional and was on the verge of breaking down. He wanted to give her a chance to compose herself before we continued. We, in fact, took a break for lunch, and Greg and I drove by his office and picked up Laura and went to the local diner for the Blue Plate special. Laura asked how it was going, and Greg said, I think Michael is doing fine. There hasn't been much come out yet, but he laid the groundwork for an honest answer for the marital period. If she admits all of it, he may still want to pursue the divorce, but he also may see that she truly wants to preserve their marriage. It will be a tough call, but I think he will be able to make it. Of course, if she lies, then Michael has to decide where to go from there. Laura looked over at me, and her woman's intuition kicked in, and I knew she saw my pain. I gave a weak smile and said, this is not an easy thing at all. Why on earth do people do such stupid things and cause so much pain in their own lives and in the lives of those who they love? She reached her hand over on top of mine and said, if we only knew, Michael, we could slap them before they could be so stupid. Of course, that got me to laugh, as did Greg. Even in this difficult time, I could laugh. I guess that is a testament to the resiliency of humanity. People grieve at funerals, but they also laugh. I guess people grieve at divorces, but can also laugh too. I smiled at Laura and said, thanks, Laura. I really needed that. She just nodded. Shortly after 1 p.m., we returned to Charlie's office for the meeting with Sarah. Before I asked the next question, I reminded Sarah, you need to answer these questions with total honesty. If you lie in any way, it will be the end of this meeting and no hope at all for our marriage. Do you understand this? Sarah said, yes, I understand, and I will tell you the truth. Sarah, I asked, from the day we were married until this very moment, did you ever cheat on me? I saw the tears well up in her eyes, and I felt so badly for her because I knew how painful it must be for her, but I couldn't comfort her or let her off the hook. I needed so badly for her to care enough about our marriage that she would confess everything. I didn't know if I could stop this divorce or not. If she told me the total truth, I would know, however, that if she told the total truth, she cared enough to try to save our marriage. Yes, Michael, I did cheat on you, she responded. She dropped her head down onto her crossed arms on the table and just sobbed. I am so sorry, Michael. Can you ever forgive me? I asked that Charlie and Greg leave the room because I had a few more questions for Sarah, and I didn't want to embarrass her in front of those other men. They both objected, but I insisted that Greg leave, and Sarah nodded to Charlie that she wanted him to leave also. I had her confession that she had cheated on me on tape. It would be all I needed in a divorce hearing, and I didn't want the rest of my questions and her answers on tape, so I turned it off. Sarah, answer these questions. When, where, who, and why? She sniffled a few times. Oh, Michael, I am so sorry. It happened this weekend at Tranquil Waters. One of the masseurs named Kevin is who I cheated with. I don't know exactly why it happened, Michael. I guess just passions of the moment would be the best way to describe the why. Lisa and I had been enjoying the day so much, and after a wonderful dinner, we each decided on getting a massage before we went to bed. My masseur was Kevin. I was on the massage table in the room, lying on my stomach. Kevin started the massage, and it felt so good. His hands were soft and yet strong. He worked the muscles in my arms and my shoulders and back. He worked from my feet up my legs. He even worked my inner thighs, but stopped short of becoming too intimate, if you know what I mean. Then he started working on my back and shoulders again, as I was still tense in those areas. I felt him untie my bikini top and pull the sides down. I have to confess it felt great, and I did nothing to stop him. At that moment, I had no idea I would get in over my head. With that, she started to cry again. Oh, Michael, if I could go back, I never would have allowed it, and we wouldn't be where we are now. You have to believe me. Even though it was killing me to hear all this, I wanted to hear the story she was telling, not out of curiosity or a desire to get turned on, but because I wanted to know what she would tell me. Go on, Sarah, tell me the rest. There is nothing more to elaborate on. We just spent the night together. I sat there for a moment, hoping she would go on, but she didn't say another word and just sat there with her head down, sniffling. Finally, she raised her head up and looked at me with a questioning look. Michael, is there any hope that you will forgive me? I didn't want to make it sound like we were in court, but in fact, we kind of were. So I asked her, Sarah, is this the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? She looked at me with what I would describe as a weird look. It was a look of wonderment. It was a look that had a question, but no way to ask it. It was kind of an I wonder how much he knows look. Finally, she said, yes, Michael, that is what happened. I am so sorry. At that moment, my heart was breaking, and against all odds, I was able to hide both the pain of her betrayal and the anger at her lies and keep my cool. I got up from the table and walked over to the door and summoned Greg and Charlie back into the room. I looked at both men and said, this meeting is over. With that, I walked over to the door and turned around. Sarah, I am divorcing you on the grounds of infidelity. The terms of the prenuptial agreement will be enforced. She was shocked and asked, but why, Michael? I confessed my cheating, and I am begging you to forgive me and go on with our marriage. Please, Michael, please, I love you so much. Please forgive me. Sarah, you lied to me. You didn't care enough about our marriage to lay it all on the line. If you had, I am not sure I could still have stayed married to you, but you never even gave it a chance. You had it all in your own hands and lied. I know you cheated more than the one time with Kevin, and I have the proof. I warned you that you had to tell the truth, and you don't. He care enough about me and our marriage to have done that. It is over. I turned back around, opened the door, and started to walk through. She screamed, wait, Michael, I will tell you everything you want to know. Please don't leave me. I spun around once again and glared at her with all the hurt and anger I could muster and spat out, you were warned. You had your chance and thought you could get away with only one episode, so you lied. You had your chance, Sarah, and it is over. Greg hurried after me and finally caught up with me as I was getting into my car. He grabbed my arm and asked me, do you really want to file on the charge of infidelity? Yes, I do. She had her chance. Somehow, I must have misjudged her all these years. I wanted her to care enough to confess everything, but she couldn't even be honest with me. Now go ahead and file. I drove out to our house now and grabbed a beer out of the refrigerator. Actually, I grabbed two and went into my office and sat at my desk and practically chugged down the first one. Then I drank the second one more slowly as I sat and reflected on all that had happened. I had multiple copies of the video downloads squirreled away in safe places, but I didn't think I would even have to make that public because I had her confession. My head snapped up when I realized that I had walked out of the office without the tape. I called Greg quickly and said, this is Michael. Did you pick up the tape recording of Sarah's confession before you came running after me? Oh, I heard him say, no, Michael, I didn't. I rushed out after you to catch you, and I completely forgot about the tape. I am so sorry, Michael. I was so careful in everything I planned, and then because I was hurt and angry all at the same time, I had screwed everything up by charging out of there without my tape. Damn. Well, Greg, why don't you give Charlie a call and see if you can run over there and pick it up? But my guess is that their answer will be something like this: we thought you had everything you needed when you left, so we just erased everything. Sorry. I will be shocked if you actually get it, but don't worry even if you don't get it because I have plenty of evidence to file for infidelity anyway. Okay, man. I am sorry. I know you didn't want to use the video downloads, and now you might have to if she fights the infidelity charge. Don't worry about it, Greg. Everything will work out. After I hung up with Greg, I went to the refrigerator and got another beer. Damn, how could I be so stupid? I wasn't lit up, but I was feeling no pain as I sat and watched the evening news before going off to bed. I thought I heard a vehicle come onto the yard, so I slowly pulled myself up and out of my chair and went to the back door. I walked out onto the porch and saw a dark form. Moments before the lights went out, something hit me on the back of the head, and all I saw was blazing light, and then I drifted off into total darkness. Beep, beep, beep is what I heard. It didn't take me long to realize that the beeping was close beside me. I opened my eyes and tried to turn slightly to my right to see what it was when the excruciating pain hit me full force. I thought my chest was going to explode, and the pain shot straight up into my head, creating flashes of blue and silver stars. What the hell? I thought. I heard a slight rustling nearby and felt the surge of something in my body, and I was out again. The next time I heard the beeping, I opened my eyes and looked around as best as I could without moving. I had learned my lesson from the first time. I saw a nurse sitting in the chair beside me. I tried to turn again slowly this time, but I couldn't turn. "Hi, Michael. I'm Beth, and I'm your nurse. Please don't try to move, okay? Everything is going to be okay, and I will explain everything to you, but please lay still. Do you understand me?" I think something was jammed down my throat, but I was able to nod my head a little. So I nodded that yes, I understood. "Michael, I need to go tell the doctor that you have regained consciousness, and then we will be right back in here, okay?" Again, I nodded that I understood. It was finally dawning on me that I must be hurt and in the hospital, but I couldn't recall anything about how it had happened. I guess that someone would eventually tell me, so I just lay there with my eyes closed until I heard them approaching me again. "Mr. Turner, Michael, I'm Dr. Wallace. You have had several serious injuries as a result of a beating during the robbery of your home. Now that you have come around, I am very certain that you will be okay, but you had to be restrained so you wouldn't re-injure yourself by excessive movements. I'm sure you felt the extreme pain when you tried to move yesterday. Am I right?" I had no reason to smile, but I know a slight smile came to my face as I once again nodded my affirmative to the pain. "Yes, we should have been a bit more proactive on the restraints so you didn't have to go through that pain. I'm sorry. I think we can take off the restraints now, Nurse Michelson, but Mr. Turner, do not try to do anything on your own yet, okay?" I nodded and also pointed to the tube down my throat. "Yes, we can also remove the ventilator now. Nurse Michelson will do it." The restraints were removed, and the tube was removed as well. My throat was killing me, and I couldn't speak. I was given a sip of water, and after a short time, I could talk, but my voice was really crackly, and it hurt a lot, so I just whispered, "Will someone tell me what happened to me, please?" Dr. Wallace said, "Michael, it is 8 a.m., and you have just regained consciousness and gotten off the ventilator. Your throat is going to hurt for a few hours at least, and we just want you to rest for now. Nurse Michelson is going to sit with you, and after you have had a chance to rest, we need to let the police know that you were able to talk. I will give you a while before we make that call so you can recover some, but you will need to talk to them, and they will be able to tell you everything that happened. I can tell you that medically, you have some serious injuries, including a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and multiple contusions. You also had a punctured lung from one of your ribs that caused your lung to deflate, but EMTs got to you in time to resuscitate you, and after repairing the damage to your lung, we were able to reinflate it. You were actually pretty lucky, Michael. If you hadn't been found quickly, you most certainly would have died. To put it bluntly, you have been beaten up about as thoroughly as you could get. You were unconscious for 5 days, came to for a couple of minutes yesterday, and were out again until today. We are going to monitor you closely for a few more days, and then you will probably be free to go home." As promised, I had the rest of that day to rest, with Nurse Michelson sitting close by the entire time. Anytime I moved quickly, I got pretty severe pains, so I lay pretty still. By later that afternoon, I was able to sit up, and with a great deal of assistance, I was able to use the facilities. Beth, Nurse Michelson, and I had some time to talk, and I found out that she had been about 4 years behind me in school. Her name then was Beth Lee, and she had married Michael Michelson, and she had a 4-year-old daughter, Sarah. Apparently, Michael was like Sarah and had been cheating on Beth, so she divorced him. I told her what had been going on with Sarah, and of course, she was quite sympathetic. The next morning, bright and early, I was entertaining 2 police detectives, Harold Watson and James Lee. I asked them to fill me in on what had happened to me before they got too far into asking questions. Detective Watson said, "Well, apparently it was a robbery that resulted in an assault on you. We found a 2x4 on the porch alongside you, and it had your hair and blood on it. There were no fingerprints on it, so we assumed whoever wielded it had been wearing gloves. The door to your house showed no signs of forced entry, but of course, that is because you came out onto the porch and the door was already open." He continued, "When we searched the house, we discovered that a number of pictures had been removed from the walls. There was an empty strongbox in one of the desk drawers. All the file cabinets in the office had been ransacked, the drawers and closets in the bedrooms had been searched, and there were empty drawers and racks of a jewelry box in the master bedroom. We see evidence of a robbery, but of course, don't have a clue as to what was actually taken. Detective Lee jumped in. When you're able to go home, you will have to look things over and determine to the best of your ability what has been taken. The doctor told us that it might be 3 or 4 more days before you're able to go home. At that time, we will have you go over everything with us, and we will update the reports. Watson jumped back into the lead and said it was time to ask some questions. What do you remember of the attack, and what happened after? Well, I said, not much, I'm afraid. I had had a couple of beers and was watching the evening news when I heard a vehicle drive onto the yard. I got up to go see what it was about and stepped out onto the porch and saw the hint of a person kind of in shadows or darkness, and then the lights went out. I cannot recall seeing or hearing anything else until yesterday. I'm afraid I will not be much help in solving who did this. Well, Watson said, I think we still need to ask you a few questions, which should help us work through this. Where was your wife when this happened? My wife and I are separated. We are in the process of getting a divorce, so I actually have no idea where she was at the time, I said. Tell me, Mr. Turner, can I call you Michael? Yes, of course you can. Is your divorce going amicably, or is there contention between the two of you? I guess I would have to say it isn't going well. She is contesting the grounds that I am planning on filing under. And what grounds will those be, Michael? I'm going to file on the grounds of infidelity. We have a prenuptial agreement, and her settlement is significantly less under those terms of divorce, so that is what she is contesting. Well, if I might say so, that gives her plenty of reasons to do you harm. Detective, I added, I just don't believe she would do anything to hurt me. I can't believe it. That's okay, he interjected. It will be something we will look at very closely, however, to do a thorough investigation. So, are there any other people who might have a reason to do this to you? Do you have any business relationships that may have gone bad? Have you had any disagreements with neighbors, or friends, or family, or any others? No, I can't think of a thing. Okay, Michael, I know we will have to take a complete inventory of what was taken when you were able, but 2 things I want to ask about now. Did you have any cash in the house, perhaps in the strongbox, and how much would it have been? Also, did you have anything else in the house, including jewelry and artworks, that would have had significant value? I'm talking about thousands of dollars of value or greater. Yes, there was some cash in the strongbox. I would say it was upwards of 10,000. I usually keep around 15,000 in cash on hand, but I know I have paid some things out of it recently, so it is probably at about 10,000. There were some nice pieces of jewelry, but maybe only a few over 15,000. There was nothing else of significant value that I can think of at the moment. I didn't tell them about the hidden safe behind the bookcase yet because firstly, the detective never mentioned it, and secondly, I was pretty certain that no one would have found it, and I wanted to keep that a secret if at all possible. Well, Michael, I think that will be it for today. If you think of anything, please don't hesitate to call me, and when you're ready to go home, let me know so we can do that inventory. If we have any other questions, we will stop by here or at your home if you're there. Over the next 4 days, I got progressively better. I had plenty of nap time most days, but some of the time, I sat and talked with Beth. I had several visitors, including James, Lisa, Greg, and Laura. Sarah did not come to see me, and other than Lisa, none of her family came to see me either. I suppose that was understandable under the circumstances, but I would have actually welcomed a visit. Charlie, Sarah's attorney, did come to see me. We had been friends for years before this whole divorce thing started, and I was glad he had come. Everyone told me how sorry they were that I had been injured and wished me well. Both Lisa and Laura kissed me on the cheek before they left, and they both had tears well up in their eyes. I had some difficult times over those 4 days, though. I slept, and I know that some of the time I was having bad dreams. I would wake up in a panic with my heart racing and felt tears in my own eyes a few times when I awoke. I wasn't sure where I was, but it seemed that Beth was always there to soothe me with soft words and touches. At least one time, I know I woke myself up screaming, but I don't recall any of the bad dreams or the reason for the screams. I found out later that she stayed at the hospital with me even when she was off duty and only went home to clean up and change clothes each day. She told me it was because of the events of my marriage that were especially close to her heart, and she wanted to be there for me. I really appreciated that too. Dr. Wallace stopped to see me and let me know I was going to be discharged. I was happy for that and immediately started to get ready to leave. Beth helped me get ready and actually wheeled me down to the lobby and out the door where James and Lisa were waiting to take me home. She wished me good luck and gave me a big hug. I know she really cared about me, and I was thankful for her, but my life was in turmoil, including my marriage and my health, so I didn't pursue any further relationship with her. I told her I would like to call her sometime in the future, and that was it. When I walked into my house, I could see the mess that was still there. James and Lisa offered to help me straighten up, but I told them that I would rather leave it like it was for the time being until I had looked everything over. I promised them that I would call them to come help me when I was ready. They reluctantly agreed and left me alone. The first thing I did was walk into the office and check on the safe behind the bookcase. Everything was in there, including quite a bit more cash, certificates of deposit, and some stocks and bonds. It was obvious that no one had found the safe, or those things would have been taken too. The DVD of Sarah's infidelity was safely there as well. I looked through the rest of the office, and other than the cash, my laptop computer, and a few numbered prints of Wildlife by Terry Redlin, nothing appeared to be gone. I did notice that bank statements and credit card statements appeared to be laid out on the desk, so I am sure someone must have looked through them. I called both and alerted them that my account numbers might have been compromised and to be on the lookout for unusual activity. After a couple of weeks, the investigation into the robbery and beating was moving slowly because the police really had no evidence that would connect to anyone. Detectives Watson and Lee updated me often on the status of their work, but so far no additional leads had come up. They did mention that because there were no high-value items taken, it was a dead end trying to trace things through fences like they do in some crimes. On their last call, they both pretty much indicated that it would be put on the back burner unless some meaningful evidence came to light. In the initial stages of the investigation, they had asked some serious questions about Sarah and me. I had been open and upfront with them in most instances. One thing I felt pretty strongly about was that Sarah wouldn't have hurt me, and why take things that she would have gotten in the divorce anyway? I guess the detectives agreed with that reasoning too, because nothing came of it. I had established new bank accounts and had new checks printed because I felt my old accounts had been compromised somewhat. Fortunately, there was no activity that I couldn't explain, but I still felt safer in establishing the new ones. I had purchased a new laptop computer and had reorganized everything in the office. I was back in business. I sat down to pay some of the bills that had piled up while I was out of it and came across a bill from EDS Services. A light bulb clicked on in my head for the first time since the robbery. EDS stood for Electronic Data Storage Solutions. I had video surveillance of my yard. It encompassed the house, the garages, and the warehouse. The video feed went into the computer in my warehouse office. Every night, that feed was uploaded to EDS as a storage backup system. It was retained by them, and I paid a monthly fee based on the amount of data retained by them. Every month, I would go in and delete the oldest data to keep the fees manageable. I hadn't deleted anything from the time of the robbery. I had video. I immediately logged onto the website for EDS and selected the day of the robbery from the archives and downloaded the entire day onto my laptop so I could view it. I was hoping that the quality would be good enough to identify who had beaten and robbed me. If it was good, I would copy it onto a DVD and give it to Detectives Watson and Lee. That would get the investigation going again. As I scanned through the day, I realized there was nothing there that I would give to the detectives, and I knew now that they would never solve the crime. The rest of the bills were paid, and I started planning how I was going to move forward with the rest of my life. I decided to make contact with an old friend of mine from college days who worked for AgriGlobal, one of the largest agricultural merchandisers in the U.S. Through them, I arranged to meet with the powers that be in their acquisition department. It is amazing what people connections will do to make things happen. After about 2 weeks, I had worked through my plans with AgriGlobal, and I took a little side trip to Las Vegas. I ended up flying to Phoenix because I had some business there, and then drove up to Vegas to do a little gambling. After 2 days, I flew back home and put all of my plans into action. I called Greg and had him call Hudson Construction to set up a meeting for me with Sarah and her brothers, Aaron and Ethan, and her sister Lisa. I told him that he should mention that with the impending divorce, the building reserves required by the state would no longer be sufficient because they wouldn't be able to include my supplies stored there. I had Greg tell them that I wanted to sit down and discuss the situation with them and come to some resolution. I think Greg shocked them because they readily agreed to meet with me. I guess they hadn't given any thought to what would happen if my supplies were no longer in the equation. I walked into the office and greeted them all. Hello, Aaron, Ethan, Lisa, Sarah. I guess you understand one of the reasons I felt we should sit down and resolve some issues. Aaron started to say something, but I held up my hand and said, I think I called this meeting, and I suggest you all just sit here and listen to what I have to say before you make any comments. I honestly think it will be in everyone's best interest if you do that. First, I would like to put this divorce to bed, if you will. Sorry about the dig, Sarah. I put the last draft of the divorce down on the table in front of Sarah and told her, sign these, please. She said, Michael, I don't want a divorce. Whatever you think I did was not worth throwing away all the good years we had, and I wish you could forgive me and work through our problems. I certainly don't want to do this here in front of my brothers and sister. Sarah, we are going to finish this now. There is no tomorrow for our marriage, and the sooner you sign these papers, the quicker we can both get on with our lives. She got all red in the face and blurted out, well, if you must divorce me, I still plan on fighting the infidelity issue. That is the least you can do for me. I knew she would play that card, but I was, of course, ready for it. If you choose to fight me on the infidelity issue, Sarah, I will have no recourse but to put this DVD into evidence before the court. And I threw a copy of the DVD onto the table with the divorce papers. In case you are wondering what it is a video of all 8, yes, I said 8, times you cheated on me at the spa. Lisa's face turned brilliant red, and she shot daggers at Sarah. You didn't, Sarah. How could you do that? You told me you did the same thing I did when approached and shut them down. How could you do that to Michael? Yes, Lisa. She did do that. She was with Kevin that first night when Kevin approached you. Then she was with Kevin the next night. And on your second visit, she was with Kevin all 3 nights. And on this recent visit, she was with him 3 times. So yes, 8 videos of you with Kevin, and Kevin ought to get my infidelity issue squared away quite well. Sign the damn divorce papers right now, Sarah, or I go to court with this. I am done messing around with you. I could see that Aaron and Ethan were also in shock, and Lisa was quietly crying while Sarah signed the divorce papers. I left her 1 copy and put the rest in my briefcase. Sarah had a numb look on her face, and there were unshed tears in her eyes. For what? I couldn't be sure, but it didn't matter. I could see that she was shocked that I had the evidence to prove multiple incidents of infidelity, but she wasn't done being shocked yet. Now let's move on to the other issue before us, the building supplies issue. I can tell you were all in shock by what I just told you. So I am going to make this quick but unfortunately worse. The bad news is that with this divorce, you will no longer have the value of my stored supplies included with your reserves and will be in violation of your building license and your loan covenants. The good news is that I went to your father and presented my case to him, and he agreed to sell me his 51% interest in the business. Your agreement with him had no clause for first right of refusal, so I guess Charlie didn't do the best job for you in the purchase after all. I didn't show him evidence of your cheating, but he believed that I had it, so to him, this was a no-brainer. He knew the company would be in trouble without my equity, so he sold me his stock, and now I am the majority shareholder in Hudson Construction Incorporated. You each own 12, and as a group, are in the minority position with 48. The bad news is that I have negotiated a deal to sell my controlling interest in Hudson Construction to Agri Global. They are always on the lookout for up-and-coming construction operations, and Hudson Construction fills the bill at the right price. The good news is that you have the option to sell your shares to them for the same price I negotiated with them. It is my recommendation that you do that. I negotiated a very good price. The bad news is that now your company is owned by someone else, and they will be evaluating personnel to see who adds value to the company. The good news is that as part of my negotiations, you each have 1 year of guaranteed employment. During that time, I highly recommend that you bust your asses to prove to them that you are a valuable employee. Just so you know, I have also sold my hardware store chain to them, and James has sold his business to them as well. James has signed a long-term contract with Agri Global to manage both businesses, and we all know what a great job he does and will do for them. The shock I had noted on all of their faces deepened and took on a degree of rage as well. Aaron, being the oldest and the unofficial leader of the Anderson clan, was the first to actually speak. What the hell have you done, Michael? You have destroyed this family business because my sister betrayed you. What kind of man are you anyway? How did you get my father to sell you? What kind of lies did you tell him? I tell you what, Aaron, I said. First, your father sold me his stock to keep you out of jail, to keep Ethan out of jail, and to keep Sarah out of jail. You ask what kind of man I am, but you should be asking yourself what kind of man you are, what kind of man your brother is, and what kind of woman your sister is. I tossed the second DVD out onto the middle of the table. I think this video will give you all the answers you need as to why this is all happening. It clearly shows your pickup on my yard the night I was beaten. It clearly shows you and Ethan beating me. It clearly shows you coming out of my house with my belongings. Consider yourselves lucky that I chose this route of revenge instead of turning this over to Detectives Watson and Lee. Sarah finally spoke up. Michael, how can you do this to me? Sarah, you are another case altogether. With you, I feel like I wasted my whole life. Your father always treated my dad well enough, but always kind of like a second-class dumb farm boy. Aaron and Ethan treated me very much the same way, always thinking you were too good for the likes of me. You were my best friend, but you also considered yourself better than me in many ways. I could always tell. You were a deceitful lover. You promised to be exclusive with me and immediately slept with Mike Nelson. You were a cheating wife, disrespecting me in our marriage by being with those men. When you watch that video, remember that I saw every second and I heard every word. And worst of all, Sarah, you are a lousy best friend. You know, I almost died in the attack. One of my broken ribs punctured a lung, and it deflated. If the paramedics hadn't gotten to me when they did, I would have died. Interestingly enough, Aaron and Ethan broke my ribs, but it was the 3 or 4 kicks from your booted foot that drove the broken rib into my lung. You, Sarah, almost killed the man you say you love so much. I would call that being a pretty rotten friend, don't you think? Sarah had fainted. Lisa and Ethan rushed to her to catch her before she fell out of her chair. Then Lisa went and got a cold cloth to help revive her. When she was conscious again, I took my final shot. So you now know your father sold me his stock to keep all 3 of you out of jail. He isn't very proud of his children, except you, Lisa, and I am sure you will hear plenty about that in the future. Like I said before, I believe I have wasted most of my life on you, Sarah, but I won't be wasting any more of it. You wanted to stay with Lisa to clear the air, and I have to say you made a pretty good call on that one. It wasn't a good idea to come home because, if you had, I would have killed you, Sarah, just like I will kill you now if you ever come near me again. I turned and left, stopping only to make sure I had the divorce papers with me. It was quite a long drive back to my home, but the revenge was complete, and I had the rest of my life to live in peace. Thanks for sticking around till the end of this intense story. What would you have done if you were in Michael's situation? Would you have handled things the same way, or chosen a different path? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories. Until next time.
I'm James, but I don't take kindly to being called Jimmy. It ticks me off. Standing before the jury, beads of sweat trickled down my face as I started my opening statement. I couldn't afford a lawyer, so I had no choice but to defend myself. Was I anxious? Damn right, I was scared out of my mind. If I botched this, I was staring down 5 years in prison for assault and battery. My wife Karen sat there clutching her lover's hand, glaring at me with contempt, hoping her testimony would push me out of her life and straight into a cell. I met Karen on a wet, miserable night 16 years ago, the kind you read about in old novels. Maybe I should have taken that as a sign to stay away, but she was stunning, and I was so damn lonely. She drove a Lexus and brought it into the shop where I was just starting as a mechanic. It was my first week, and I was eager to impress my boss. Her car was a sleek silver beauty, but I couldn't keep my eyes off Karen. Her raven black hair contrasted sharply with her bright car. I tried to sneak a look at her figure, but the thick coat she wore, a necessity in the chilly San Francisco evening, didn't give me much to see. Her car kept sputtering and eventually wouldn't start at all. It was 6:00 on a Wednesday evening, and I was still scratching my head, trying to figure out what was wrong. Karen, she preferred Kate was supposed to drive from San Francisco to Sacramento that night for her cousin's wedding the next day. Then she had to rush back for an accounting exam at Berkeley. Her luggage was crammed into the trunk. I promised her I'd fix the car even if it took all night. You can imagine Kate wasn't in a chatty mood, and I respected that. The shop was empty, and I needed Kate to hold a flashlight over the engine while I slid under the car. I went back and forth, checking wiring diagrams and the fuse box. By 9:00, I discovered that a tiny crack in a fuse clip wasn't letting the circuit complete because of a nearly invisible loose wire. I fixed it, and as I looked at Kate, I felt a surge of electricity too. She cried because she had to get on the road but hated driving at night, especially in the rain. San Francisco doesn't get much rain, but when it does, it feels like the end of the world. She also had poor night vision. She started sobbing about missing her cousin's wedding. I hugged her and told her to let it all out. She melted into my arms. I was stunned by how drawn I was to her and how comfortable she seemed with me. 2 days earlier, my live-in girlfriend of 7 months and I were at a bar when a tall, muscular, well-dressed man with a Rolex watch tried to drag her away from our table to dance with him. He didn't even ask me. I told him to let her go. When he forced my hand off hers, I kicked him in the shin hard with my steel-toed boot and stomped on his foot. He limped away, and my girlfriend followed him, apologizing. She called me a loser with no future and left with him. I don't take disrespect from anyone. I don't look for fights, but I won't back down either. I didn't want to go back to my lonely apartment that night filled with memories. I'd planned to get drunk, but I had a better idea for the weekend. My girlfriend was out of the picture, so nothing was stopping me from making a move on Kate. I stroked her hair and said if she could find me a place to crash in Sacramento, I'd drive her there and back after the wedding. I knew it was impulsive, but that's just how I am. I don't think things through, I just act. I called my mom and asked her to pack me a bag with a suit and a thermos of coffee. Kate called her mom to arrange for me to stay in their guest room. We left the shop, picked up my stuff, and hit the road south. I guess my conversation wasn't that thrilling because within 10 minutes, as we climbed the hills, Kate was sound asleep, leaning on me. Being that close to a gorgeous woman helped me forget about my recent breakup. I kept my arm around her so she wouldn't slump over. About 3 hours later, as we crossed the bridge into Sacramento, I had to wake Kate to get directions to her place. She blinked awake and asked if it was her turn to drive. She saw we had driven through the night and guided me to her family's home. Kate rang the doorbell, and her mom, who was up all night grieving her brother's death, answered. Kate's mom and Kate hugged, and then her mom hugged me, thanking me for rescuing her daughter in her time of need. Her mom had an open bottle of whiskey on the table, and Kate poured out 2 more glasses. I plopped down on the plush couch. I'm not a big drinker, and 1 glass after a long day's work and a 3-hour drive knocked me out. Hours later, as the first rays of sunlight pierced the rain clouds and filtered through the stained glass windows, I woke up on the couch, wrapped in blankets. At the wedding, I held a large umbrella over Kate and her mom's heads. They both clung to my waist to stay under the umbrella. Comforting these 2 grieving women gave me a deep sense of satisfaction. I admit, I like taking care of people. My dad always said you don't judge a man by his paycheck or how tough he is, but by how well he takes care of those who matter to him. After the wedding, I met Kate's extended family, and they assumed by how we acted that we'd been together for a while. They said we made a cute couple. Kate took my arm, saying every girl dreams of finding her hero, and I was hers. By the next semester, she moved out of her dorm and into my apartment. A year later, we tied the knot. My boss at the shop was so impressed by how I fixed Kate's car and then drove her to Sacramento that he used the story in a newspaper ad to show what a caring garage he ran. I even got a raise. Kate got a job as a mortgage broker. She made good money, but didn't like the job. She confided that her boss was constantly flirting with her and had recently tried to touch her inappropriately. This confession only reinforced my trust in her. I offered 2 solutions: she could quit, or I could go down there and beat some respect into her boss. She quit the next day and became a real estate agent. Her brains, looks, bubbly personality, and relentless drive made her a top agent in under a year. I moved from the Honda shop to a BMW shop. Those cars are temperamental, but I had the knack for fixing them. I was now making as much as a mechanic could. I made more than most teachers and some lawyers. We were careful with our money and saved as much as we could to buy a house. When my wife took time off to have kids, we could live comfortably on my income alone. I could have started my own shop and made even more, but I didn't want the headaches that would keep me from my family. I just wanted to work on cars. I loved it so much that Kate joked I didn't have a job, just a well-paying hobby. Once a month, my boss and I would buy an old BMW, fix it up, sell it for a tidy profit, and split the money. All the extra cash went into a college fund for our kids. As much as I loved my work, I loved my kids more. I limited my overtime, so I rarely missed a family dinner. My biggest failure was trying to teach my daughters the basics of car maintenance. The thought of getting grease on their polished nails horrified them. I wasn't mad they were just girly girls. In return, they couldn't teach me how to match my shirts with my pants. We had a loving give-and-take relationship. I fixed their cars, and they picked out my clothes. My wife and I worked out in the gym we set up in our garage, and we were both in great shape for a couple in our early 40s. Though I have to admit, my hairline wasn't what it used to be. I refused to do a comb-over, though. I was content, but Kate said she was getting bored and wanted some excitement. So, for our anniversary, I took her on a second honeymoon to Cancun. Actually, it was really our first honeymoon. When we got married, all I could afford was a weekend in a dingy motel in Fresno. We stayed for a few days while the other rooms had new occupants every couple of hours. It was more like a no-tell motel. The Cancun package included a salsa dancing lesson for Kate. I'd planned for us to spend hours on the beach sipping mojitos, swimming and sunning, but things changed. After her salsa lesson at the resort, every man in the group was drooling, and Kate loved the attention. One guy reached out to touch her, and I grabbed his hand before he could. I bent his fingers back until he yelped. We went back to our room where we fooled around like teenagers. For the rest of the trip, I didn't see much of Cancun unless it was from our bed. I'll always treasure that time we spent there. I thought we were both happy, but Kate's restlessness returned when we got home. She insisted she needed expensive cosmetic surgery to feel younger and better about herself. I thought she looked amazing, but her tears opened my wallet. I paid for all the surgery. She threw herself into her work, doubling her income, but at the cost of working double the hours. She rarely joined us for dinner more than once a week. I cooked, I drove our girls to school, I cheered them on at their soccer games every weekend. My absent wife had more important things to do, and our daughters often complained about it. She called them ungrateful and brushed off their feelings. They came crying to me, but I had no magic words to make them feel better. When Kate asked me to explain the importance of her work to our girls, I told her I agreed with them. She yelled that I was just an uneducated grease monkey who wouldn't understand. She stormed out of the house, returning close to midnight reeking of whiskey. One evening, while my daughters and I watched our usual reruns of CSI for the umpteenth time, Kate came home with tears of pride, clutching a glass trophy announcing she was the top agent in all 7 of her company's offices. She placed it on the mantel after moving a large family photo to make space. I couldn't help but think of all the family time she'd sacrificed for that worthless piece of glass. It was like she traded our love for that idol she now worshipped. Our marriage went downhill fast after that. Each night she'd come home from a cocktail hour with her colleagues and rush into the shower without even kissing me. She wasn't quick enough, though, for me not to smell a man's cologne on her. Her phone was locked tight, so I couldn't find any clues there. It was clear to me and our daughters that Kate was having an affair. I warned my daughters I was going to divorce her. I had an appointment with a divorce lawyer in 3 days. My girls begged me to wait until they graduated high school before I kicked her out. One was a senior, the other a junior. They knew how badly their grades would suffer during a nasty divorce, and then they wouldn't get into a good college despite all the money I'd saved. They had enough friends who'd gone through ugly divorces to know the deal. I promised I'd wait. I'd never denied my daughters anything, so I would put up with Kate's crap for their sake, even if it meant swallowing my pride for another year. I secretly still hoped we could fix this marriage, though I knew the odds were slim. The only reason Kate came home at night was to grab clean clothes. My daughters and I did the laundry. I didn't ask her if she was cheating. I just told her if she kept this up, she'd lose her husband and daughters. I was shocked that she didn't say a word or even seem to care. I've read that this is called the fog of an affair. One of my customers, a tech guy who sold his company for billions and owned 4 Ferraris, laughed when I told him my problem and offered his help. He suggested I buy a GPS tracker for her car, put spyware on her phone, and place hidden recorders in our house, her purse, and anywhere else I could think of. Then he said I could set up a Wi-Fi server in the house, connect them all via Bluetooth, and back everything up in the cloud. I stopped him right there. I didn't understand a damn word. I know engines, but GPS trackers and spyware might as well be rocket science. I could build a spaceship easier if Scotty from Star Trek gave me some dilithium crystals. I drove by Kate's office and saw through the window that they were having a Christmas party. Most of the guests were with their spouses, but Kate hadn't mentioned it to me, much less invited me. I parked next to a new Ferrari 488 and went inside. I looked for Kate and felt my stomach drop when I saw her with some young buff guy. And that's when everything exploded. That's why I'm here today, in front of a jury, facing felony charges for assault and battery. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm James Holt. I'm a 45-year-old blue-collar mechanic who's struggling to keep working because of arthritis. I learned about my wife's company Christmas party by chance as I drove by, even though she'd kept it a secret from me. I thought I'd surprise her, but I was the one in for a surprise. My wife is 40 years old with a master's in business administration, which I paid for, and her boyfriend is 28. I'm no lawyer. My only legal education is 20 years of watching CSI. I'm representing myself because I can't afford a lawyer. In 16 years, I'd saved $525,000 in a trust fund for my daughter's college. That money was supposed to send my daughters, Emily and Olivia, to college. I asked my daughters to stand up in the audience and blew them a kiss, which they returned. I noticed most of the jurors smiled when I did that. When I walked into the party, I pointed at her boyfriend, and he swaggered over, telling me to get lost. He called me Little James and said he was her man now, towering over me with muscles built in the gym and probably on steroids. Then he boasted that my girls weren't going to college. He bragged that Kate had taken all the money from their trust fund and bought him a Ferrari with it. That's when I allegedly beat the living daylights out of him. He claims I broke his nose and knocked out 3 teeth. If that's true, it might be against the law, but you have to ask yourselves if it's against the laws of nature. If a guy like that can go around seducing other men's wives and stealing the money those men worked their whole lives for without any consequence, then no marriage is safe. So if these allegations are true, I not only defended my marriage, but I defended all marriages everywhere, including those of you jurors. One of the jurors, an older guy, pointed to his bare ring finger and winked at me. If just one juror refuses to convict, it's a hung jury and I walk. I felt like I'd just guaranteed myself at least a hung jury. The prosecutor anticipated my strategy and argued that we can't allow vigilante justice in a civilized society. There's never a justification for it. This should be left to divorce courts. I knew better. Divorce court is no place for a husband cheated on by his wife to find justice. My brother's wife cheated on him, and the court awarded her the house and 10 years of alimony. Why do the courts encourage this kind of behavior? My first witness was my daughter, Emily. She testified that she's a senior in high school with a 3.8 GPA. She'd been accepted to Stanford, but because her mother stole her tuition money, she could only afford community college. As she left the stand crying, she hugged me and said loudly for the jury to hear that I was the best dad in the world and that she loved me. One of the women jurors cried. My second witness was my daughter, Olivia. She testified that her mother ignored the family, and as the prosecutor suggested, I had planned to divorce Kate months ago, but didn't because she and her sister begged me to wait until after they graduated. That made a solid impression on the jury. She pointed at her mother and shouted that the woman should be the one on trial for stealing their college money. The judge didn't even wait for the DA to object before telling the jury to disregard her outburst. The prosecution called his first witness. My wife testified that I beat the crap out of her boyfriend at the party, but I never touched her. On cross-exam, I asked who paid for her master's degree. She admitted I did. Who paid for her cosmetic surgery last year? She admitted I did and began cheating on me soon after. How long had she been seeing her 12-year younger boy toy? The judge sustained the DA's objection. Then I asked if she withdrew all our money and mortgaged our house so I couldn't afford a divorce lawyer. The DA objected, saying it was 2 questions. She admitted to both separately. When I asked who forged my name on the loan documents, she pleaded the 5th. Then she admitted her boyfriend had laughed in my face about it right before I allegedly beat him up. I asked how she planned to pay for our daughter's college. She didn't answer. I asked if her boyfriend's love of Ferraris was more important than our daughter's future. My daughters, sitting in the audience, stood up and shouted that their mother was a thief who stole their college money, and they never wanted to see her again. The judge had them removed from the courtroom, but the effect on Kate was devastating. The effect on the jury was crucial to my case. The DA objected, but it was sustained, though the jury saw and heard it all. My next witness was Kate's office manager. She was a bitter woman in her 30s who'd been divorced 3 times, each one because of her cheating. She testified that Kate had been bragging about her affair for months to everyone in the office, saying I was just a dumb grease monkey too stupid to figure it out. She said Kate didn't try to hide it and loved treating me like a fool. The office manager admitted she and others in management encouraged the affair because her boy toy looked better to clients than a mechanic with greasy hands. When Kate's lover took the stand, I stood next to him. It was clear he towered over me. I'm 510, and he was at least 63. I wanted the jury to see the size difference. I didn't pick a fight with someone smaller than me, but with someone much bigger. He placed his hand on the Bible. "Raise your right hand," I demanded. He struggled. When he did, I removed the gold Rolex from his wrist. "I'd like to enter this into evidence, Your Honor." "Could you read the inscription on the back?" The judge, a sharp-eyed woman, read it aloud. "To our grandson, James Holt. When did you steal my watch?" "I didn't steal it, little James," he sneered. "Your wife gave it to me." He thought mocking me in front of the jury was a good idea. "So you're saying Kate stole it?" "Well, I didn't take it, so give it back to me, little James." The judge handed it back to me, not him. "Your Honor, I believe the witness just admitted to conspiracy to steal my $50,000 watch and receiving stolen goods. Could you instruct the DA to file charges against him and my wife for this theft and for stealing my daughter's college fund?" Then I asked the guy, "How much money did Kate give you?" He said he didn't know. I said I had the canceled checks. He admitted she gave him over $80,000. "And what services did you provide for that kind of money?" He didn't answer, so I did. "Are you really that good in bed to be worth $80,000? The idiot grinned and said, "Your wife sure thinks so. Unlike you, little James," he sneered at me. I was enjoying his self-destruction. Most husbands can't satisfy their wives, so they come to me. He didn't realize he was losing the jury. By the time he was done testifying, I think most of the men and half the women on the jury wanted to punch him. I never showed any anger when he kept calling me Little James. My dad taught me not to interrupt an opponent when he's making a fool of himself, so I let him go on. "So Kate paid you to be her lover?" The DA's objection was sustained. "Finally, how many other married women have you been with?" "None," he answered before the DA's objection was sustained. "Your Honor, may I briefly leave the courtroom to bring in some witnesses?" The judge agreed. I walked back in with 3 women and 4 kids. I'm asking the question again. "How many married women?" "Objection," the DA shouted. "Your Honor, I'm asking again to prove the witness is a liar who committed perjury." The judge corrected me, saying the proper legal term was to impeach the witness' prior testimony as she overruled the DA. The women and their kids left the courtroom. 5, he admitted. "How many families did you break up?" He was silent. "I know of at least 3 kids who now live in broken homes because of you. Because of your fun with married women, You lost 3 teeth and suffered 2 broken ribs. Do you think you'll seduce any more married women? No way, he quickly answered. So this was a learning experience and prevented more broken homes and kids suffering. I turned to the jury. I'd call that a service to the community. Do you recognize the 4 men in the front row? No, he snapped. One of the men was hitting his palm with his fist while another pretended to slice his throat with his finger. They're the ex-husbands of some of the women you seduced. Want to say something to them, maybe apologize? The DA objected, which was sustained. Remember their faces. You might see them again. The prosecutor called a doctor who testified about the injuries I allegedly inflicted. On cross-examination, I asked if he was married. He was. I asked if, now knowing the facts, he had any sympathy for the victim. None at all, he replied. Next, the prosecutor called a therapist who said the guy was too hurt to work, and I was responsible for his lost income. On cross, I asked the therapist what kind of work the guy did. He didn't know. So how can you testify that he can't work if you don't know what he does? The therapist was silent. Can he still be good in bed? I asked. The therapist said yes. Well, since he made $80,000 as a male gigolo, in your opinion, can he keep servicing married women? Of course, the DA objected, and it was sustained, but not before the jury laughed. My strategy was to make the jury laugh so they'd be less likely to convict me. I wanted them to know I wasn't a violent guy, just a wronged husband seeking justice. Then I called my surprise witness. I felt like Matlock from one of my favorite courtroom shows. His name was Robert Hawkins. He contacted me after seeing my story on the news. The DA spit out his water at the prosecution table. He objected, saying the witness's testimony was irrelevant. I asked how he could know that before he testified. The judge temporarily excused the jury while she heard his testimony. Mr. Hawkins, have you and the DA met before today? Yes, he replied. 3 years ago, I had an affair with his wife. He came to my house with 2 cops and they beat the crap out of me. Did he say anything to you while they beat you? Yeah, he said. This is what wife-stealing assholes get. Did you press charges? Hell no. They threatened to lock me up for 10 years on some bogus charge. The DA objected, claiming the testimony was irrelevant. The judge nodded in agreement. Before she could sustain the objection, I said the DA had opened the door to this testimony by arguing in his opening statement that vigilante justice had no place in society. This testimony was relevant because he had personally used it. The judge thought it over, overruled the objection, recalled the jury, and allowed my questioning of Mr. Hawkins into evidence. I was lucky to remember seeing a lawyer on a show use this trick years ago. Who needs law school when you've got reruns? What happened next? I asked. That night, his wife came to my place with a black eye and 2 broken ribs. She said he beat her up. Objection, yelled the DA. Sustained, replied the judge. I was in the zone. Mr. Hawkins, did you see a black eye on the DA's wife when she came to your place? Yes. Did you take her to a hospital? He nodded. Your witness, I said, twirling my pencil. No questions, the DA replied. I tried to call my next witness, the DA's ex-wife, but the DA asked if we could approach the bench. He didn't want her testimony on the record and offered to drop all assault charges if I pled guilty to disturbing the peace and paid a $300 fine. I looked at the jury and refused. No, I think they're on my side, and I want your record of domestic violence on the record. The judge left the bench for a few minutes and went into her chambers. She said we were taking a 30-minute recess. When court resumed, the judge had a huge grin. The DA then told the judge he was dropping all charges. The judge refused. She wanted to hear his ex-wife's testimony. An older man entered the courtroom with a TV crew and 3 sheriffs. The judge smiled at him and the DA nearly choked. His ex-wife testified how he beat her that night and others before it. She brought hospital records. The judge listened intently. After the DA's ex-wife testified, the judge dropped all charges against me and asked her if she would testify against her ex-husband. She declined, fearing his power. The older man who entered the court asked to speak. He introduced himself as the district attorney, which I knew from his endless campaign ads. I remembered the news saying he was behind by 2 in the polls and needed a miracle to win re-election. The DA told the DA's ex-wife that her ex would no longer be an assistant DA after today, so she was safe to testify. He faced the TV camera and said, "I will not tolerate wife beaters or allow one to work in my office. I will personally prosecute him." A sheriff handed the DA some papers, cuffed him, and led him away. Then the DA turned to Kate and her boyfriend. "You stole this man's money for your children's college and spent it on a sports car." He turned to the camera, his face a mask of anger. A sheriff handed Kate papers and cuffed her, while another did the same to her boyfriend. "You're both under arrest for theft, forgery, bank fraud, and grand larceny." I realized the DA was smart and used my case to win his re-election. For once in my life, I lucked out. I made a mental note to vote for him. Facing the camera next to me, the DA said his office was all about justice. I knew I'd see that statement and my face in his ads, so I applauded him. The judge looked sternly at me. "Today you got a pass. Next time you won't be so lucky." "Your Honor, there won't be a next time," I said, raising my hand. That week, Kate lost her job. The DA froze all her accounts and assets. She tried to reconcile with me, but I laughed in her face. Our kids refused to speak to her. 2 weeks later, the DA won re-election, and a week after that, I got an invitation to meet him. He said I was the reason he won and was grateful. He said I was a better investigator than most of his staff and offered me a job as an investigator. I would have to take and pass a 6-month criminal law course at the local community college, but I'd be on salary and working with an experienced investigator. Since my arthritis was making it hard to keep being a mechanic, I said yes. He also insisted I take a 3-hour anger management course. "I wish I knew you when my wife divorced me," he said with a grin. He was good to his word and personally prosecuted the former DA for spousal abuse. He got 2 years in prison, alongside many he'd sent there. I heard he won miscongeniality from his fellow inmates. As a bonus, the DA told me he indicted Kate and her boyfriend for a slew of charges based on stealing my watch, the money, and forging my signature. With all her money either frozen or returned to me, she had no means to hire a decent lawyer. After she paid her bail, she was stuck with a new public defender who needed directions to the courthouse. Kate and her lover each got 4 years in prison. My daughters and I never visited her despite her letters. I sued Kate's former employer for intentional infliction of emotional distress because they knew and encouraged her affair. I used her boss's testimony in my trial as evidence. I got $20,000, which I added to my daughter's college fund since tuition keeps going up. The next 2 years brought me joy and sorrow as I drove my daughters to college, with 4 years of tuition safely in the bank beyond Kate's reach. I devoted my life to raising 2 smart, independent girls. I really missed them. Before they left, they made me a color chart so I could match my shirts and pants. Even with their chart, my sense of fashion was hit or miss. They warned me my taste in women was lacking and said they'd pick my next wife. I didn't click with the 3 women they introduced me to. As ordered, I attended the anger management course where I met Selma. A judge ordered her there after she knocked out her ex-husband's girlfriend's teeth. This was a woman after my own heart. Now, for the second story, my name is Gabriel Martinez. After my great-great-great-grandfather who fought for justice, I'm proud of his legacy. You can call me an immigrant or an undocumented worker. I don't care. I obey the laws of God and the laws of the United States. I think I'm a better citizen than many born in the U.S. I was born in Guadalajara, Mexico, and with my parents, crossed the border to San Diego when I was 4. Then my uncle drove us to Los Angeles. My mom worked as a maid for the Anderson family, a wealthy family, and my dad started as a gardener. He and my mom saved every penny until my dad could buy his truck, lawnmower, and tools to start his landscaping business. They worked hard and lived frugally. They taught me to delay gratification and plan for the future. When I was 6, I went to an Easter egg hunt at the Andersons with 20 other blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids. My mom spent a week's pay on a new outfit and shoes for me so I wouldn't look like a poor kid. She scrubbed me until I glowed. I was so proud to find 3 eggs. As I ran to show my parents, Alex, the Andersons' 10-year-old son, said a stupid immigrant kid wasn't allowed any eggs and took them, shoving me into the mud, ruining my new suit, while the other kids laughed. I didn't care that he was bigger. I was ready to fight him, but my dad held me back and tried to calm me down. Alex's parents didn't see what happened, and my mom never told them. We left quietly. I never forgot the shame my family and I felt that day and vowed to get revenge. I didn't know when, but my parents taught me patience. We never went back for another Easter egg hunt. I went to school and it was clear I had a gift with numbers. By 10, I did the books for my dad's landscaping business. At 13, I also kept the books for my uncle's bar. At 16, I was the captain of my high school math team and won the citywide math Olympics. We won, and I got a trophy as a mathlete. My proud mom, my stoic dad, and my aunts and uncles all cried as they hugged me and thanked God for everything America had given us. Later, as we ate dinner at my uncle's restaurant, a customer named Juan, with 2 bodyguards, handed me a 100 bill. He said, "They call us ignorant immigrants, but with your brains, you've brought pride to our community." He offered his help if I ever needed it. By 17, while in high school, I was a part-time bookkeeper for the Andersons and their clothing business in LA's garment district. They treated my mom and me well, but their son Alex was still cruel to us both. He called us names and laughed at us. He was an only child, spoiled by his doting parents. I graduated with honors but could only afford community college. I won the math award from my junior college's math department. Alex dropped out of college, and 6 months later, when his dad died, he took over the business. If you didn't know better, you'd say Alex was good at delegating. If you did, you'd know Alex was lazy and let others do the work. The other employees and I had been well trained by Alex's late father and did our jobs without any supervision from Alex. From a community college business course, I learned that good management wasn't complicated. 10% of management was telling subordinates what to do. The other 90 was making sure they did it right. We all knew our jobs, but Alex was such a jerk that, one by one, his dad's old employees quit. I was one of the last to stay. The business started to decline. It just needed a push off the cliff. I'm not a CPA, just a poor bookkeeper for a millionaire named Alex. I'm 22. I don't make much money. I found out my gorgeous 21-year-old girlfriend now wanted a man who did. I'd been in love with her since high school when Sophia was a sophomore, and I tutored her in math while she taught me to dance. Dancing was her passion. At her Quincy AG+ era, I was her escort. I paid Rita, a talented designer at the Andersons factory, to create a dress just for Sophia. She looked stunning in it. All the other girls wanted one like it. I tried to convince my boss that this was an untapped market, but he said the Latino community couldn't afford expensive dresses, and that was that. Sophia and I danced a waltz, and it was over for me when I caught a whiff of her hair. Sophia, several boys, and I rehearsed the dance scene from the movie Dirty Dancing for over a week, and at the end of our dance, Sophia jumped from the stage into my arms. It brought the house down. Sophia's great-grandfather called us the Latino Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. I didn't know who they were, but it must have been good. Sophia chose me over other guys because she saw me as her ticket out of the East LA ghetto to the wealthy white suburbs. We were both light-skinned enough to pass. She looked like a young Salma Hayek, but without the humor. With my Aunt Carmen's help, who worked at a high-end restaurant, Sophia got a job washing hair and later became a beautician at a top salon in Beverly Hills. She was great at her job and had a lot of wealthy clients. Sophia often came home repeating stories she'd heard from clients about vacations, clothes, and cars. The common factor was these women were pretty with no talent other than marrying wealthy men because of their skills in bed. Sophia spent too much of our money copying their style. This hampered my plan to save for a down payment on a house. Sophia was eaten up with jealousy and envy. I tried to warn her that she was breaking the 10 Commandments with her envy, but she didn't care. I knew she wanted to live their lives, but I didn't know how far she'd go or who she'd hurt to get there. Sophia was more than passionate in bed. She was a tigress. Some weekends we left bed only to eat or use the bathroom. We were so happy. I asked her to marry me several times, but she always said it was too soon or some other excuse. Looking back, I now know she didn't want to be tied down to me. She was looking to trade up, and I was just the first step on her social ladder. I hadn't a clue. I'm not perfect. I don't go to church often, but ever since my parents drilled it into my head as a child, I tried to follow their example and obey the 10 Commandments. I didn't memorize all the prayers, but I figured the commandments were the most important part of the Bible, and the rest wasn't as crucial, except for treating others as you'd like to be treated. Sophia, on the other hand, knew all the hymns and prayers. She thought that made her a better Catholic and earned her a place in heaven, despite any bad things she might do on earth or that she used birth control. She wasn't too concerned with the commandments or treating others well. Alex admired a photo of Sophia on my desk and made an indecent comment about her. I took the photo home that day and never brought it back. Later that year, Alex invited me and Sophia to his house for a company-wide Christmas party. Remembering the Easter egg hunt years ago, I didn't want to go, but Sophia insisted. She wanted to see the mansion she'd heard about from my mom. I almost never said no to Sophia, so we went. After I warned her that Alex was a pig who'd come on to her, she said she was a big girl and knew how to say no. Blinded by love, I trusted her. Looking back, I was a fool. Every man is a fool for the woman he loves if he truly loves her. When I tried to hug my mom, who was working at Alex's party, she shook her head no with a stern look. She didn't want me acting differently than the other guests. Sophia, however, ignored my mom and pretended not to know a lowly servant. Sophia loved the champagne my mom served and loved the good life, while my boss loved Sophia. Alex took Sophia on a tour of his mansion. They danced exclusively with each other, and with each dance, his hand slid lower down Sophia's back to her rear. She clearly enjoyed it. I tried to cut in, but they refused to let me dance with her. At one point, they went upstairs while everyone smirked at me, and 2 security guards blocked my way. My mom watched my humiliation as she served drinks. I thought of pushing past the guards, punching Alex, and breaking some teeth, but my mom held me until I calmed down and changed my mind. She explained I'd get arrested, probably deported, and Alex would just laugh. I'd gain nothing but lose everything. Finally, she made me understand Sophia wasn't worth it. I told her how much I needed revenge on Alex. My mom shook her head no. Take your time, use your brains, not your fists, and don't get even, get ahead. Her last words to me before I left were to move with strategy, not emotion, if I wanted to succeed. My parents may lack formal education, but they're the wisest people I've ever met. I needed a plan that would hurt him much more than a black eye or broken leg. I kissed my mom goodbye, left, and cried all the way home over my broken heart as I plotted Alex's downfall. I know many men would drink themselves into oblivion, but I was raised to be temperate and think clearly. Okay, I had 1 beer. I'm not perfect. In my family, we drown our sorrow with food. I drove to a deli in Beverly Hills where I drowned my sorrow in a large bowl of chicken soup with matzo balls and ate my way to oblivion. One of my aunts worked there as a waitress, and I developed a taste for the Jewish deli food she often brought home. I have another aunt who works at an Italian restaurant nearby and also brought food home. With 5 aunts working as waitresses at various restaurants, I was raised on an eclectic mix of ethnic food. Once, when asked to describe our diet, my dad simply called it American. 2 days later, Sophia returned, and she ignored me when I begged her to stop seeing Alex. I didn't know if it was true, but I said I could forgive her past mistakes, but she laughed in my face. She gave me 2 choices. Door number 1, I could accept that she'd spend a few nights a week with my boss, and in return I'd get a 5 raise. Or door number 2, I could go to hell, lose my job, and be on the street without her. Sophia threatened if I didn't go along, she'd claim I beat her and have me arrested and deported. I hadn't been back to Mexico in 18 years, and I didn't want to return in cuffs. Though I told her I'd accept door number 1, I chose a 3rd option. I'd get my revenge, which meant the total financial destruction of Alex Anderson. I could have left that day, but I'd waited since I was 6 to get even with him. Another 3 months meant nothing. I no longer loved Sophia, but I was sickened by how she debased herself with Alex. I wouldn't take my anger out on Sophia. I understood her fear of poverty and desire for a better life. She couldn't help herself. I doubled my anger on Alex for how he treated her. I knew people who'd rough him up, but bones heal, and I wanted him to suffer where it hurts the most, his wallet. After Christmas break, I went back to work. Though I was choking on my hatred, I didn't show it. I learned from the movie The Godfather to act like a fool, endure ridicule, lull my enemy into a false sense of security, and wait for the right moment to strike. I acted the part of the submissive weakling to make Alex think he was safe from me. I even thanked him for my raise, though the words burned in my mouth. He feared physical violence, which was never part of my plan. My job was to open all the mail, make out checks for the bills, hand them to Alex for his signature, enter the amounts in the ledger, and then mail the checks. I continued my job as usual, except I stopped mailing the checks to the IRS, California Franchise Tax Board, property taxes, car insurance, withholding taxes, and the mortgage on Alex's heavily mortgaged mansion. Those checks went into the shredder. I didn't steal a penny. At worst, I was guilty of negligence, not theft. Every week, I wrote a memo to Alex warning him that he wasn't paying his bills. Of course, I never gave him those memos. I put them in his filing cabinet and computer, neither of which he ever checked. Meanwhile, I stopped paying my rent and all my bills. One advantage of not qualifying for a credit card due to my immigration status was I had no debt. I saved every dollar I could and kept it in cash in an old broken chandelier hanging in the living room. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough since I didn't want a paper trail if I had to disappear. Of course, the creditors sent letters to Alex, but since I opened all the mail, I filed them where they belonged, knowing Alex would never open the cabinet. If I was ever suspected of financial sabotage, those filed letters would clear me of blame. They were my get-out-of-jail-free cards. After 3 months, Alex had over $1 million extra in his accounts and owed his creditors that much plus interest and penalties. The total wouldn't bankrupt him. That's when I began Phase 2, the final part of my plan. I was also the bookkeeper for my uncle's bar in downtown L.A. He owned 3 more in Baja, Mexico. The L.A. bar was in a shady neighborhood with a bunch of immigrants selling stuff on street corners. They worked for a man named Juan, who drove a spotless black Cadillac Escalade. He came from the same village as my family. One of my cousins was married to one of his. He was the man who gave me the 100 when I won the math contest and said he'd help me if I needed it. I now knew what Juan did for a living and tried to stay clear of him. He was often in a booth in the back of the bar. I slowly walked over to him with my hands visible. He was cautious and carried a .45 caliber pistol with enough spare magazines to hold off a small army. I asked if he'd like $1 million. He quickly agreed. After I explained the plan to him, he was impressed and once again offered me a job. I said if my plan worked, I'd be happy to work for one of his many legitimate businesses. Sophia hardly came back to our apartment at all. I pretended I still wanted to be intimate with her to keep up the act. Of course, she refused, which suited me. Alex was a pig who probably gave her all sorts of diseases. Alex would drive her to our apartment in his Ferrari much too fast every Friday at 5:00 p.m. like clockwork so she could drop off her dirty laundry and pick up clean clothes for a weekend of clubbing, which I had washed like the good little submissive they thought I was. Alex loved taunting me about this at work. It was disgusting, but I had to do it for my plan to work. Revenge is a dish best served cold. One Friday after work, I threw away all of Sophia's clothes and belongings, handed the apartment keys to the landlord, and left for Mexico. I didn't give notice to Alex. On Monday, I started work for my uncle's bars in Baja. That last Friday, Alex, as usual, sped toward my apartment when he rear-ended Juan's black Escalade. He didn't know the car suddenly stopped because the brake lights were disconnected. Alex couldn't swerve left because a truck was beside him, and another truck blocked him on the right. Those trucks were part of the plan. The SUV had 6 passengers, all of whom needed an ambulance. Alex and Sophia were hurt, but not seriously. Sophia never wore a seatbelt, no matter how much I begged her. She went face first through the windshield, scarring her once beautiful face. Though I hadn't sought revenge on Sophia, karma caught up with her. I suppose I should have gloated, but it broke my heart to hear what happened. When Alex gave the cops his insurance, he learned he had none. The policy had been canceled for non-payment. The ticket he got for that was the least of his problems. Sophia, plus the 6 passengers, all sued him for $750,000 each, a total of $5.25 million. Their lawyer froze Alex's bank account so he couldn't hide his money. Then the tax bills and mortgages came due. Alex went from being up $1 million to owing over $5 million. He filed for bankruptcy, lost his house and business. Now that my mom was out of a job, she and my dad moved with me to Tijuana. With all they'd saved over the years, they had enough, and with U.S. Social Security, to retire comfortably. Alex had been such a jerk that he had no friends to help him now that he was poor. He dumped Sophia, whose disfigured face no longer interested him. Juan and his men received over $80,000 from the bankruptcy court. They were happy. Sophia also got $80,000, which paid for surgery on her face, leaving just a few scars. Even though she broke my heart, I was glad she got the money and the surgery. I hadn't meant to hurt her. She was a victim of her greed and Alex's cruelty. In case Alex couldn't figure out what happened, I called him on his last day at work and explained that pushing me into the mud as a kid and stealing my girlfriend had consequences. Thanks to me, he was broke. Do you still think I'm just a stupid immigrant? He was speechless, and I felt relieved that 20 years of humiliation were avenged, and I no longer needed to carry that burden. I stayed in Mexico for a few months to let things cool down. Then I returned to L.A. I contacted Juan and suggested he use the clean money from the accident to buy the Andersons' bankrupt business and hire me to run it. I explained my plan to Juan. Juan had faith in me, so he did it. I renamed the company La Bella Moda. I hired young Latina women as dress designers. Some of these girls were incredibly talented. The business focused on the Latino community and flourished. I offered girls a 75% discount if they handed out our brochures at their schools and brought in 5 other girls who bought our dresses. I think we dressed at least half the Latina girls in California, celebrating their Quincy AG Plus era, and we had about the same market share for prom. It was a market that was not only growing in size but in wealth. Rita, who designed Sophia's dress years ago, was the most talented and market-savvy designer I'd ever met. She was also smart and beautiful. I paid her tuition to attend the Fashion Institute. In return, her designs became our best sellers. She came from a traditional family. She invited me to Sunday dinner, which, even though we hadn't yet dated, meant we were almost engaged. Her dad taught high school math, and we bonded over trigonometric functions and his daughter's future. Since we weren't married, she couldn't live with me, and soon I couldn't live without her, so we married a month later. She was pregnant and designed a new line of clothing for the factory maternity clothes. Sales went through the roof. With each maternity dress, at Rita's insistence, we include a booklet on prenatal care. At the insistence of many customers, we also sell a line of maternity prom dresses. It saddens me that we sell so many. Business is very good because of the hard work my talented employees do, and I share the wealth with them. At our Christmas party this year, as I handed out bonuses, a group of my employees lifted me on their shoulders, shouting Viva Martinez as my wife, in-laws, parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins watched with pride. Now it was my turn to cry. Thanks for tuning in to this wild tale of betrayal, revenge, and ultimate justice. If you were in James or Gabriel's shoes, how would you have handled it? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories. Until next time.